I won a fortune in the lottery, $1.5 million to be exact, and I chose to keep it a secret. First, I reached out to my children for help, a test of their true colors. Every one of them refused, dismissing me as a senile old man on a shoestring budget. Only a single person extended a hand, completely unaware of my new wealth. I never would have expected their help, but now they're set to inherit everything. Before we get started, please hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. The lottery slip felt flimsy in my worn hands as I carefully marked the numbers I always played. 5, 12, 21, 28, 38. Each number was a piece of my heart. Eleanor's birthday, Brenda's, Kevin's, Leo's, our wedding anniversary. The bonus number, 16, was for Daniel, my late brother's son. $20. The same amount I'd spent every week for the last 5 years. Dad, what on earth are you doing? Brenda's voice sliced through the chilly January air before her car door had even clicked shut. I carefully folded the ticket, tucking it into my shirt pocket as her boots stomped impatiently across the frosty driveway. The front door swung open without a hint of a knock. I saw you at Johnson's Market. She stood in the archway to my kitchen, her makeup slightly smeared, her chic salon uniform looking out of place. $20, Dad. A full $20 while I'm rescheduling clients because I can't afford the gas to get across town. Good morning to you too, darling, I said, remaining seated at my kitchen table, my hands folded calmly. She snatched the lottery ticket from my pocket before I could even flinch. These ridiculous numbers. You actually believe you're going to win? You think some miracle is just going to fall from the sky and make us rich? Give that back, Brenda. No. She held it up like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Do you have any idea that I owe $1,200 for Emily and Jacob's school trip? $1,200. And here you are, throwing away $20 on a fantasy. I rose to my feet slowly, my old knees groaning in protest. I've given you $4,500 this year alone. Kevin got $6,000 for that business venture. Leo got $2,500. Do you want me to list every grocery bill I've covered, every power bill, every time one of your cars broke down? Her face turned a deep shade of crimson. That's different. That's family supporting family. And this, I said, my voice steady, is my money supporting my hope. Your hope? She let out a bitter laugh. Dad, you're 72 years old. You live on a pension. Every single dollar counts. Every dollar I earned, my voice dropped to a near whisper. Every dollar I put away working the night shift at the shipyard while you kids were growing up. Every dollar I didn't spend on myself so you could have good shoes and a decent lunch for school. She gripped the ticket even tighter. I'm not asking for the world. You're asking for my last $20. The words came out with more force than I intended. You want my lottery money. Kevin wants to manage my savings. Leo wants my emergency fund. When do I get to want something for myself? Brenda's eyes became narrow slits. What you want is a waste. What I want is my own business. She glared at me for a long moment, the old grandfather clock in the hall ticking loudly between us. Outside, a cold wind rattled the windows. Finally, she tossed the ticket onto the table. Fine, waste your money. But don't come crying to me when you're eating canned soup for a week because you spent your last bit of cash on a pipe dream. The front door slammed with enough force to make the coffee mugs on the counter rattle. Through the window, I watched her sedan kick up gravel as she sped out of my driveway. The red taillights vanished around the bend, leaving just the sound of the wind and my own quiet breathing. I picked up the lottery ticket and smoothed out the creases her angry fingers had made. The numbers stared back at me. My family's birthdays, the dates that once signified joy and celebration, now felt like a list of demands. 5 hours later, as the winter darkness enveloped Charleston, I sat by myself with a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The lottery ticket lay on the table next to the morning paper. That's when the phone started to ring. The chili was just starting to simmer when the phone rang. I'd been stirring it slowly, watching the steam curl up from the pot, trying to ignore Brenda's harsh words that still echoed in my quiet house. The caller ID displayed Kevin's number. "Hey, Dad." His voice had that measured, careful tone he always used when he thought I needed to be managed. "Brenda called me. She sounded pretty worked up." I set the wooden spoon down and leaned against the counter. "I'm sure she did." "She said you bought another lottery ticket for $20. "That's right," I confirmed. A beat of silence. I could hear the faint click-clack of a keyboard in the background. He was still at his office downtown, probably burning the midnight oil on some project meant to prove how invaluable he was to his firm. "Dad, we've talked about this. $20 might not sound like a lot, but it adds up. That's over $1,000 a year. You always were good with numbers, son." "I'm being serious." His voice grew sharper. "You're on a fixed income. Every single expense needs to be carefully considered." I clutched the phone tighter. "Like the $15,000 business loan you defaulted on last year? The one I had to co-sign for so your credit wouldn't be destroyed?" Silence. Then, "That was different. That was a market fluctuation that was impossible to predict. And this is my investment in a little bit of hope." "Hope doesn't pay the bills, Dad." "Neither did your tech startup or your can't-miss real estate deal, or that import-export business you swore was going to make you a millionaire." "Those were calculated risks," he said defensively. "No," I said, turning off the heat under the chili. "Those were gambles, just like this lottery ticket. The only difference is, I'm honest about what mine is." Kevin let out a dramatic sigh. "Look, I'm not trying to run your life. I'm just trying to help you make sound financial choices." "Don't," the word shot out, sharper than I meant it to. "Don't you dare use your mother's memory to justify treating me like I'm a child. That's not what I'm doing." "Isn't it? You call me to lecture me about $20 while I'm still paying off the loan you took out. When was the last time you called just to ask how I was doing? When did you last visit just to sit on the porch with me?" Another pause. The keyboard sounds stopped. "I care about you, Dad. We all do. That's why we worry when we see you making these poor choices." Poor choices. I glanced at the lottery ticket, now held to my refrigerator by a magnet shaped like a palmetto tree, Eleanor's favorite. $20 for the chance to dream of a different life. $20 for a few seconds of what if. "Kevin, I need to ask you something." "Shoot." "If I won this lottery, really won it, what would you do?" He laughed. "Dad, the odds are astronomical." "That's not what I asked." A longer pause this time. When he finally spoke, his voice was laced with caution. "I'd be thrilled for you, obviously, and I'd hope you'd be smart with it. Get some professional financial advice. Make sure it was invested properly." "Invested properly? By who?" "Well," he said smoothly, "I do have some experience with wealth management." I hung up the phone. The dial tone buzzed in my ear for a second before I placed the receiver back in its cradle. The chili had stopped simmering. The kitchen suddenly felt colder, as if all the warmth had been sucked out through the phone. I walked to the refrigerator and looked at the ticket again. 5, 12, 21, 28, 38, and the bonus, 16. My family, reduced to a set of numbers on a flimsy piece of paper. Numbers that could mean absolutely nothing, or they could mean everything. 8 days passed before the drawing. 8 days of letting my children's calls go to voicemail, of eating quiet meals alone, of wondering at what point I had become nothing more than a walking ATM to them. Wednesday evening found me in my worn recliner, the TV remote resting on my knee as I aimlessly flipped through the channels. The house always felt bigger at night, with shadows stretching from the empty corners where Eleanor's furniture used to be. I'd sold most of it after she was gone. It was too many memories for one old man to live with alone. Channel 4 flickered on just as the lottery jingle began to play. Ashley Stewart, the local news anchor who'd been calling the numbers for as long as I could remember, gave the camera her polished, warm smile. "Good evening, South Carolina. Tonight's Palmetto Cash 5 jackpot is a stunning $1.5 million. Let's see if we have a winner tonight." I reached for my glass of iced tea and found it empty. The lottery ticket sat on the end table, tucked behind a framed photo of Eleanor holding a baby Brenda. I'd moved it from the fridge after Kevin's call, wanting to keep it closer for some reason. Tonight's first number is 5. My hand froze on its way to the empty glass. The second number, 12. I snatched the ticket, my fingers suddenly feeling thick and clumsy. 5, 12, Eleanor's birthday, Brenda's birthday. The third number is 21. Kevin's birthday. I held the ticket nearer to the lamplight, comparing the numbers on the slip to the ones Ashley Stewart was calling out. This couldn't be real. Fourth number, 28. Leo's birthday. My heart was pounding against my ribs so hard I thought it might break free. I read the ticket again, and then a third time, sure that I must be mistaken. And the fifth number tonight is 38. Our wedding anniversary, June 3rd, 1983. 38 years of marriage condensed into 2 digits on a slip of paper that now felt like it was humming with electricity in my hand. And tonight's bonus ball is 16. Daniel's birthday. My nephew, the boy I hardly saw but cared for deeply, the son of my brother who was taken from us far too young. I'd added 16 to the ticket on a whim a few years back, feeling that family should stick together, even on a lottery ticket. Ashley Stewart was talking about checking your numbers carefully, about the claiming process, about how winners had 180 days to come forward, but her voice sounded distant, as if it were coming from underwater. I stood up too quickly and almost stumbled, dropping the ticket. $1.5 million. I walked on shaky legs to the kitchen and laid the ticket flat on the counter under the bright fluorescent light. 5, 12, 21, 28, 38, and the bonus, 16. The numbers stared back, as plain as day. I had picked these numbers because they represented family, the milestones that marked our lives together. Eleanor would have roared with laughter at the irony. The very family that had spent the week telling me I was a fool for buying lottery tickets had just made me a millionaire. A little over $1 million after taxes, according to the TV. More money than I'd seen in the last 2 decades combined. More money than my own father, who'd worked his fingers to the bone on the docks, had seen in his entire lifetime. But as I stood there in my kitchen, holding a $1 million piece of paper, my thoughts weren't on the money. I was thinking of Brenda yanking the ticket from my pocket, calling my hope ridiculous. I was thinking of Kevin's condescending lecture about my poor financial choices. I was thinking about how quickly they could calculate what I owed them, but never what they owed me. The ticket felt heavier now, weighted with both incredible possibility and a bitter desire for vindication. I went to my bedroom and opened the small safe where I kept Eleanor's jewelry and our important documents. The lottery ticket slid inside, right next to her wedding band and the deed to the house. Before I shut the door, I glanced at it one last time. Tomorrow, I would call my children. Tomorrow, I would invite them to dinner at the Harbor Grill, our old family spot. And tomorrow, I would begin to find out who they truly were when they believed there was nothing left for them to gain. The safe door clicked shut with a sound of finality, like a decision being sealed. Morning sunlight streamed through my bedroom window as I worked the combination on Eleanor's old safe. 3 turns right, 2 left, one right. The lottery ticket was right where I'd left it 12 hours earlier, nestled between her engagement ring and our marriage certificate. $1.5 million, reduced to a slip of paper smaller than a photograph. I laid out my documents on the kitchen table like a general plotting a military campaign. Driver's license, social security card, the lottery claim form I'd printed from their website at the crack of dawn. Everything I needed to make this real, to turn those numbers into actual money in my bank account. The drive to the post office took 15 minutes through Charleston's quiet residential streets. The winter sun glinted off the Spanish moss, hanging from the ancient oaks, and the crisp air had a salty tang that always made everything feel fresh and new. I parked between a battered pickup truck and a pristine SUV, then walked inside, the manila envelope tucked securely under my arm. Certified mail, I told the postal clerk, a woman around my age with a warm smile and tired eyes. She weighed the envelope on her digital scale. That'll be $9.50 with return receipt. That's fine, I said, handing her a $10 bill and watching as she applied the green sticker that would track my lottery ticket's journey to the state capitol in Columbia. How long for delivery? 2 business days, usually. It's important, I said. I can see that, she replied, with a knowing look. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table with the phone placed before me like a tool I was about to use. 3 numbers were scribbled on a notepad. 3 children who were about to learn a lesson about who they really were. Brenda picked up on the second ring, her voice already sharp with the stress of her morning rush. Southern style. Brenda speaking. Dad, I'm with a client. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, sweetie. I just wanted to invite you to dinner Saturday night. The whole family. A pause. I could hear the background noise of the salon, the hum of hair dryers, muffled chatter, and the pop station she always had playing. Dinner? At your house? The Harbor Grill. My treat. If you're buying, I guess so. Her tone shifted instantly, the annoyance replaced by a transactional warmth. Can I bring the kids? Emily has a dance class at 4, but we should be able to make it by 6. Bring them. I'll make a reservation for 7. 7. Who else is coming? Your brothers, Kevin's wife. A family dinner. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. When was the last time we all had dinner together? Your mother's funeral. The remark stung, probably more than she intended. Eleanor's funeral was 3 years ago, and yes, that was likely the last time all my children had been at the same table. Saturday at 6, don't be late. I hung up before she could ask any more questions, and immediately dialed Kevin's office. Low Country Financial, how may I direct your call? His assistant's polished voice answered. Kevin Brooks, please. It's his father. A brief hold, then Kevin's carefully controlled voice. Dad, is everything okay? You never call the office? I'm calling to invite you to dinner on Saturday. The Harbor Grill, 6 p.m., a family dinner. Silence stretched between us. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, searching for the angle, the hidden agenda. What's the occasion, Dad? This isn't like you. Can't a father just treat his family to dinner? Of course, but Another pause. This isn't about that lottery ticket thing again, is it? Are you trying to make some kind of point about family unity? The question revealed more about his own mind than he probably knew. To him, everything was a negotiation, a point to be won. I'm trying to have a meal with my children. Are you coming or not? We'll be there. But, Dad, if this is some kind of ambush about your spending habits. $6, Kevin. And don't you talk to me about my habits until you've paid back the people you owe. I hung up with more force than was necessary and immediately dialed Leo's number. It went to voicemail twice before he picked up on the third try, his voice thick with sleep. Yeah? It's your father. I'm inviting you to dinner Saturday night. Dinner? I heard him yawn. He must have just woken up after a late shift at the bar. What time? 6 o'clock? The Harbor Grill. Sure, I can eat. That place has a great shrimp and grits. Who's paying? There it was. The first question each of my children had asked when I offered them something. Not, how are you? Not, what for? But who's paying? I am, obviously. Cool. 6:00 on Saturday. I'm there. The line clicked dead without so much as a goodbye. I leaned back in my kitchen chair and stared at my notepad. 3 phone calls, 3 acceptances, and 3 different ways of asking who was footing the bill. Not a single one of them had asked why I wanted to see them, how I was doing, or what was special about getting the family together. Saturday was going to tell me everything I needed to know about the people I had raised. Saturday evening arrived with the early winter darkness settling over the Harbor Grill's parking lot. I had gotten there first, as I'd planned, and claimed our usual large round table in the back corner, the one Eleanor always insisted on for birthdays and anniversaries. The waitress, a kind woman named Maria, who had been serving our family for over a decade, brought me an iced tea without my having to ask. A family dinner tonight, Mr. Brooks. It's been a while since I've seen you all together. Something like that, I said. I chose a seat with my back to the wall, giving me a clear view of each arrival, each interaction, every telling detail that would reveal who my children had become. Brenda breezed in at 6:15, her 2 children, Emily and Jacob, trailing behind her like bored afterthoughts. Emily, who was 13, had headphones in and didn't look up from her phone. Jacob, 10, immediately asked what the Wi-Fi password was. Neither of them even looked in my direction until Brenda nudged them sharply. Say hello to your grandfather. Hi, they both mumbled, their eyes already scanning the room for chairs as far away from the adults as possible. Kevin and his wife, Chloe, arrived at exactly 6:20, his punctuality as meticulously planned as everything else in his life. Chloe gave me a genuine smile and a warm squeeze on the shoulder. She was the only one who ever seemed genuinely happy to see me. Kevin surveyed the table like a general planning a battle, calculating his best position. Leo wandered in at 6:35, his hair still damp from a quick shower, wearing the same faded band t-shirt he'd had since college. He slid into his chair with a casual air and immediately waved Maria over for a beer. Sorry I'm late. Traffic on the causeway was a nightmare. There hadn't been any significant traffic in Charleston on a Saturday evening since the last hurricane scare, but nobody called him on the lie. Maria took our orders, and I watched my family fall into their usual routines. Brenda immediately flipped her menu to find the daily specials. Kevin studied the wine list as if it were a corporate financial report. Leo ordered the most expensive cut of fish without even glancing at the price. So, Dad, Brenda began before we'd even gotten our drinks, about the kids' school trip expenses we talked about. Let's order our food first, I cut in, but she was already rolling. Jacob needs new cleats for soccer and Emily's art class has a supply fee I just can't cover right now, with the salon being so slow after the holidays and all. Mom, can we get dessert? Emily piped in, not once looking up from her phone. If Grandpa's paying, Brenda answered automatically. Kevin cleared his throat with the air of a man used to being in charge. Actually, Dad, Chloe and I have been talking about your financial situation. Those lottery tickets are just throwing money down the drain. I could realistically double your savings in the market in 6 months. Here we go, Leo muttered, taking a long drink of his beer. Investment advice from the guy who lost 10 grand on that startup. That was a calculated risk based on market analysis. Kevin shot back, his face tightening. Unlike gambling on lottery numbers. Trust me, I know a thing or two about gambling, Leo said with a wry smile. I've spent years learning the odds. The house always wins, Dad. Always. Chloe tried to smooth things over. Maybe we could just enjoy a nice dinner without talking about Dad's poor decisions. Brenda's voice was sharp, filled with the resentment she'd been bottling up. While he's buying lottery tickets, I'm trying to decide between buying groceries and putting gas in my car. Jacob looked up from his tablet, just long enough to whine, "Can we go home? This is so boring." I took a slow sip of my iced tea and watched them dissect my life choices with the cold efficiency of sharks circling their prey. Every concern was about money. Every suggestion was about how my money could be better used for their needs. Every criticism was based on the assumption that I was too old, too out of touch, and too foolish to manage my own life. The main courses came, and the conversation turned to their own problems. Complaints about their jobs, their debts, their endless list of needs that always, somehow, traced back to my bank account. Leo mentioned he was behind on rent. Kevin hinted at a business opportunity that required new capital. Brenda calculated out loud how much her children's summer camps were going to cost. Not once did anyone ask about my health, my loneliness since Eleanor passed, or my memories of their mother. Not once did anyone thank me for the thousands of dollars I'd already given them over the years. They talked about me as if I wasn't even there, debating my competence and my resources as if I couldn't hear every single word. When Maria brought the check, I pulled out my credit card with hands that felt steadier than they had in years. My children watched me with the focused intensity of auditors examining an expense report. "Thanks for dinner, Dad," Brenda said, already grabbing her purse and ushering her kids toward the door. "Think about what I said about the investment proposal," Kevin added. "I'll email you some prospectuses." Leo just gave a nod and headed for the exit, probably already late for his shift at the bar. I sat alone at the table after they had all gone, surrounded by half-eaten plates and the faint scent of Chloe's perfume. She had been the only one to give me a hug goodbye. The restaurant carried on with its Saturday night buzz all around me, with other families laughing and talking, grandparents playing with grandchildren who actually seemed to notice they were there. Maria came by with the iced tea pitcher. "Refill, Mr. Brooks?" "No thanks, Maria," I said. I think I've learned everything I needed to know tonight. Sunday morning came with a crisp clarity, the winter sun streaming through my kitchen windows. I sat at my table with a fresh glass of iced tea, a new notebook, and the cold certainty that my children had failed their first test without even knowing they were being judged. Last night's dinner had only confirmed what their phone calls had already suggested. My 3 children viewed me as little more than a convenient source of funds. The only feelings they showed were frustration when I was reluctant to give them money and annoyance that they had to ask for it. I opened the notebook to a clean page and wrote 3 names at the top: Brenda, Kevin, Leo. Under each name, I started to outline the tests that would give them one last chance to prove they deserved even a single dollar of my lottery winnings. Brenda's test had to target her self-absorption, her inherent belief that my resources were there for her convenience. A health scare would be perfect. Something serious enough to require immediate help, but plausible enough that a loving daughter would drop everything. I wrote, Monday morning, 11 a.m. Dizziness and chest tightness. Need ride to doctor. See if she will leave the salon during a busy time. The brilliance of this test was its authenticity. At 72, heart issues were a real possibility. My doctor said the occasional flutter I felt was just stress, but Brenda wouldn't know that. A truly caring daughter would leave a client to get her father to a doctor. A selfish daughter would tell me to call an ambulance or find another ride. Kevin's test needed a different strategy. His controlling personality and intellectual pride made him susceptible to situations involving money and decision-making. I wrote, Tuesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Found old stock certificates worth $15,000. Ask for investment advice. See if he tries to seize control or offers genuine help. This test would play directly into his belief that he knew better than I did about all things financial. Would he give me honest advice about the best, safest options for an elderly man on a fixed income? Or would he immediately try to manage the money himself, treating me like a senile old fool who couldn't be trusted with his own property? Leo's test would focus on his irresponsibility and his casual disregard for anyone else's problems. I wrote, Wednesday evening, 8:20 p.m., lost wallet with rent money at the grocery store. Need help searching, filing a report. See if he helps or makes excuses. The timing was key. Wednesday was a busy night at the bar where he worked, a night with good tips. A son who truly cared would sacrifice a night's earnings to help his father find the money he needed to live. A selfish son would suggest alternatives that didn't mess with his own plans. Each test was designed to feel urgent but manageable, serious but not life-threatening. Most importantly, each test was designed to expose the specific character flaw that had been on full display at our dinner. They would have every chance to prove me wrong, to show the love and respect I had been hoping to see for 72 years. I made detailed notes on what would be considered passing or failing. Passing meant showing immediate concern for my well-being, a willingness to sacrifice their own convenience, and genuine empathy for my situation, not a calculation of what it might cost them. Failing meant putting their own needs first, suggesting I find another solution that didn't involve them, or treating my problem like a burden they couldn't be bothered with. My iced tea went untouched as I worked out the details. Each scenario had to feel real, desperate enough to demand an immediate response, but believable enough that they wouldn't get suspicious. My age and situation made all three scenarios plausible. Old people have health scares, find forgotten assets, and lose things all the time. If all three of my children failed their tests, I would call Daniel in 2 weeks. My nephew had called me twice since Eleanor's funeral, never asking for anything, just checking in. He lived 4 hours away and had his own life, but he had shown more real concern for my happiness than my own kids had in years. The lottery ticket sat in the safe, representing over $1 million after taxes, enough money to completely change someone's life, to give them security, opportunity, and freedom from financial stress. It deserved to go to someone who would appreciate its true value, not just the dollar amount, but the lifetime of hard work and sacrifice that had gone into winning it. I closed the notebook and checked the clock on the wall. 10:30 a.m. Brenda would be in the middle of her busiest day of the week, booking appointments, mixing hair color, and gossiping with her clients. In 30 minutes, I would call her with chest pains and shortness of breath, and I would find out if I had raised a daughter or just financed the life of a stranger who happened to share my DNA. The phone felt unusually heavy as I picked it up and dialed the number for her salon. It was time to begin the final exam of my family's character. Monday morning arrived with a sense of grim determination. I sat at my kitchen table, my notebook open to the first test, my hand hovering over the phone like a judge about to deliver a verdict. The numbers on the lottery ticket, which I now knew by heart, seemed to taunt me from their hiding place in the safe. $1.5 million, waiting for a worthy heir. At exactly 11:30, I dialed Brenda's salon. Southern style, this is Brenda. Her voice was a whirlwind of professional efficiency. Brenda, honey. I let my voice quaver slightly, adding a breathlessness that wasn't entirely fake. I need your help. I'm having these chest pains, and I'm short of breath. A cacophony of noise came through the phone, the hum of hair dryers, a client asking about her appointment time, the pop music she played to keep the salon's energy up. Everything that was more important to my daughter than her father's health. Dad? Her tone was one of mild concern, but I could hear her moving around, probably checking the timer on a client's hair color. What kind of chest pains? Sharp ones. Right here. I pressed my free hand to my chest, letting the gesture add realism to my voice. Dr. Matthews wants me in Columbia right away to see a heart specialist. Columbia? Dad, that's a 2-hour drive. Can't you see someone here in town? The question told me everything I needed to know about her priorities, but I stuck to the script. Matthews said it's urgent, that it could be serious. The problem is I can't drive feeling like this. I need about $50 for a shuttle service. A pause. The sound of a hairdryer got louder, then softer as she moved around her workspace. Dad, I am right in the middle of Mrs. Gable's color. She's getting it done for her son's wedding. And if I mess up the timing... Brenda, I think I might be having a heart attack. Can't Kevin take you? Or why don't you just call an ambulance? Each suggestion was like a slap in the face. Your father is having a medical emergency, and your first thought is to pass the buck. I gripped the phone tighter, keeping up the breathless act. Kevin's in a meeting. An ambulance would cost over $500. I just need $50 for the shuttle. Dad, I really can't get away right now. Mrs. Gable is one of our best clients, and she always requests me. She paused, and I heard her speak to someone else. Yes, Mrs. Gable, just another 10 minutes on that timer. When she came back to me, her voice had a completely different energy. Actually, while I have you, do you think you could lend me $150? There's this new uniform they want us to get for the salon's anniversary party next week. All the other stylists are getting it, and I can't be the only one who looks cheap. The silence between us stretched as her words hung in the air. Her father calls with chest pains, needing $50 for potentially life-saving transportation, and she counters by asking for $150 for a uniform. The test could not have been more definitive if I had designed it as a formal scientific study. Dad, are you there? The order for the uniform goes in tonight. I'm here. My voice was flat now, the acted breathlessness replaced by a genuine feeling of emptiness. So, can you Zelle me the money? I've got Mrs. Gable under the dryer, but I can place the order on my phone after she's done. I looked down at my notebook, my pen hovering over the space marked Test 1. Brenda. The results were undeniable. Faced with her father's medical emergency, she had prioritized a client's hair appointment and a work uniform. When asked for $50 to potentially save my life, she had requested $150 for her own vanity. Dad, the connection is getting bad, she said impatiently. I'll figure something out, I said quietly. Great, thanks for the uniform money. I hung up the phone. The kitchen felt colder, as if Brenda's selfishness had traveled through the phone lines and chilled the air. I picked up my pen and wrote in neat, steady letters. Test 1. Failed. Prioritized client appointment and personal expense over father's potential heart attack. Outside, the winter wind rustled the bare branches of the oak trees, like the last vestiges of what I had once believed my family to be. 1 test down, 2 more to go. But I already knew in my heart what the outcome would be. Tuesday afternoon brought the 2nd test, and with it, the cold, methodical dismantling of any lingering hope I had for the people I raised. I had spread old bank statements and stock certificates across my desk, creating the perfect scene of an old man confused by modern finance. At 4:20 p.m., I called Kevin's office. Low Country Financial Kevin Brooks speaking. His voice was crisp and professional, the sound of a man who believed he was in control. Son, I'm just so confused by all these investment options. I let a note of uncertainty color my voice, playing the part of the befuddled senior citizen to perfection. I could really use your expertise. Of course, Dad. What's going on? I could hear the faint clicking of his keyboard in the background, the subtle sound of a man who was always multitasking. I have some savings just sitting in a basic account, earning practically nothing. The interest rates are a joke. And I see all these commercials for stocks and crypto. I let my voice trail off, painting a perfect picture of an overwhelmed old man. The keyboard clicking stopped. How much are we talking about, Dad? Not, what are your goals for this money? Not, what's your comfort level with risk? But, how much? The first question every greedy salesman asks. Well, I've always been frugal, managed to save a little here and there. I kept my answer deliberately vague, wanting to see how his interest would grow with the perceived size of the prize. Dad, I need specifics if I'm going to help you properly. Are we talking a few thousand, 10,000 more? Possibly more, I said. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. That's why I need your advice. These online investment platforms are just so confusing. Listen, Dad. His voice shifted into lecture mode, the tone he used when explaining things to people he considered his intellectual inferiors. The basic savings accounts are financial suicide. Inflation is eating away at your buying power every single day. I know, son. That's why I called you. Here's what we'll do, he said decisively. You give me control of the account, and I'll move everything into a diversified portfolio of growth stocks and blue-chip equities. I could easily get you a 15–20% return in the first year. There it was. Not education, not guidance, but an immediate move to take control. The same controlling impulse that made him lecture me about a $20 lottery ticket was now laser-focused on controlling assets he had just learned about. Control of the account? I let a note of confusion creep back into my voice. I thought you were just going to give me some advice. Dad, you don't understand the modern market. It requires constant analysis, quick decisions. You can't be expected to manage complex financial products at your age. At my age, as if turning 72 had automatically erased decades of financial responsibility. As if the man who had managed a household budget for 40 years was suddenly too senile to make his own decisions. I could set up automatic transfers, he went on, his voice picking up speed. A power of attorney just for the investment decisions. You'd still have access to your spending money, of course, but the real assets would be properly managed. Properly managed by you. By someone who understands the markets. Dad, you waste $20 a week on those pointless lottery tickets. That fact alone proves you need professional guidance. The lottery comment stung, especially since one of those pointless tickets had just made me wealthier than he could possibly imagine. I gripped the phone tighter, maintaining my act of a confused old man, while a cold anger built behind my carefully constructed facade. So you would have complete control over my money. It's for your own good. Trust me, Dad. In 5 years, you'll be thanking me when you see how much your portfolio has grown. I looked down at my notebook, already knowing what I was going to write. Test 2, designed to see if my son would help or manipulate, had revealed exactly what I had feared. Given the chance to educate his father, Kevin had immediately tried to seize control of my assets. I need to think about this, I said slowly. Don't think too long. The market waits for no one. Even his parting shot was a pressure tactic, a classic salesman's trick to create artificial urgency and prevent careful thought. I'll call you back, I said, and hung up before he could apply any more pressure. I opened my notebook and wrote, Test 2. Failed. Attempted to gain control of father's assets under the guise of financial expertise. Immediate manipulation. No genuine help offered. 2 tests completed. 2 failures documented. 1 test remaining. Wednesday evening would bring the final, undeniable proof of what I already knew, deep down. None of my children deserved a single penny of my lottery winnings. Wednesday evening settled over Charleston with the promise of a final answer. I sat in my living room, the local news murmuring on the television at low volume, while I prepared myself for the last test. My notebook lay open beside me, 2 failed tests already documented in my neat, steady script. At 9:45, I dialed the number for the blind tiger. The phone rang 3 times before Leo's voice, rough around the edges, cut through the background noise of clinking glasses, a basketball game on the TV, and the low hum of the Wednesday night regulars. "Tiger? Leo speaking?" "Son, I'm in some trouble." I let genuine weariness seep into my voice. "I think I lost my wallet at the park this afternoon." "Lost your wallet?" I could hear him moving, probably wiping down the bar while holding the phone against his shoulder. "That's rough, Dad. Did you cancel your cards yet?" "I don't have credit cards, but I had this month's rent money in there, $200. The bank can't do anything about the lost cash." A pause. In the background, someone shouted an order for 2 IPAs and a shot of whiskey. "Hang on, Dad." I listened as he served his customers, the familiar sounds of drinks being poured and money changing hands. When he came back on the line, his voice was distracted. "Sorry about that. Wednesdays are surprisingly busy." Another pause. "Dad, I'd help you out, man, but I lost big in a poker game last night. I'm down almost $400. $400. He'd gambled away twice what I needed, and admitted it without a hint of shame or regret. The irony was almost too much to bear. My son, with a clear gambling problem, refusing to help his father because of his gambling losses. $400? I let shock color my words. "Leo, you told me you'd stopped playing poker." "I mostly have. It was just one bad night. It happens, you know? Sometimes the cards just don't fall your way. And last night they lost you my rent money. Come on, Dad. Don't lay a guilt trip on me." His voice turned defensive, the tone of a man well practiced in deflecting responsibility. "Hey, you could probably sell that old fishing gear in the garage. That stuff's got to be worth something." My fishing gear, the rods and reels I had collected over 30 years, the tools of my greatest passion, the things that brought me peace. He wanted me to sell them to replace the money he had thrown away at a card table. "Leo, I need help, not suggestions on how I can help myself." I know, but I'm totally tapped out right now." Someone yelled his name from across the bar. "Listen, maybe you finally hit it big on one of those lottery tickets, huh?" The comment landed like a punch to the gut. Here I was, holding a winning lottery ticket for over $1 million, listening to my gambling-addicted son mock my lottery habit while he refused to help me with my rent money. The cosmic cruelty of it all was almost laughable. "Those tickets are a waste of money," he continued, echoing the constant refrain of his siblings. "But hey, you never know. Maybe tonight's your lucky night." If only he knew. If only any of them knew that their foolish old father had already accomplished the impossible. But their ignorance was the most revealing part. Even when faced with my supposed emergency, Leo's first instinct was to deflect, make excuses, and suggest solutions that didn't inconvenience him in the slightest. "So, you can't help me?" I asked quietly. "Dad, if I had it, you know I'd give it to you. But being down 400 is being down 400. I'm barely going to make my own rent this month." Barely making his rent because he'd gambled away his earnings. The pattern was painfully clear. Irresponsibility led to a financial crisis, which led to him needing help from the very father he considered a fool for buying lottery tickets. "I understand," I said, though understanding and accepting were 2 very different things. "Hey, why don't you hit up Kevin? He's loaded with all that tech money." Pass the buck. Never take responsibility for your own actions. Never make a sacrifice for your family if it's inconvenient. "I'll figure something out," I said. "Sorry, Dad, for real. If my luck turns around tonight, I'll give you a call." He hung up to serve another customer, getting back to his evening of earning money that he would probably lose in his next poker game. I slowly closed my notebook. The final test was complete. 3 children, 3 opportunities to show that they valued family over their own self-interest. 3 spectacular failures. Each test had required a minimal sacrifice. $50, some honest advice, a loan of $200. Not a single one of them had passed. But I knew someone who would. Daniel's phone number was at the bottom of my contact list, a number I'd added 3 years ago after Eleanor's funeral. Tomorrow, I would call my nephew, and I would find out what real family loyalty looked like. Thursday evening settled over my empty house like a final judgment. I sat in my recliner, the notebook with its 3 documented failures closed on my lap, staring at the empty fireplace where Eleanor and I used to sit on chilly winter nights like this one. The silence felt deeper than usual, weighted with the knowledge that I had raised 3 strangers who just happened to share my DNA. The phone rang at 7:30, cutting through my somber thoughts like an unexpected ray of light. "Uncle Arthur?" Daniel's voice was full of a warmth I hadn't heard from a family member in weeks. The simple enthusiasm in those 2 words made something in my chest ache. "Daniel, son, it's good to hear from you. Mom mentioned things were a little stressful with the family when I talked to her last weekend. She said Brenda and the guys have been, well, a little demanding lately. Are you doing okay?" I pressed the phone closer to my ear, stunned by the genuine concern in his voice. When was the last time any of my own children had asked if I was okay without first laying the groundwork for what they needed from me? "I'm managing, son. You know how family can be." "I do, actually. That's why I'm calling." I heard the rustle of papers in the background. He was probably grading student essays. "Uncle Arthur, you've always been so generous with everyone. Sometimes people can take that for granted." Take that for granted. The phrase hit the nail squarely on the head. 3 failed tests had proven that's exactly what my children had been doing for years. "You might be right about that, Daniel. Look, I know it's not really my place, and I'm all the way up here in Greenville, but if you need anything at all, money, help with things around the house, or just some company, I'm here for you. I could drive down this weekend." I stared at the closed notebook, then at the phone in my hand. Daniel was offering help without being asked, without knowing if he'd get anything in return, without calculating the cost to himself. He was offering everything my own children had failed to. "That's very kind of you, son." "It's not kindness," he said firmly. "It's family, real family." His voice had a conviction that reminded me so much of his father, my late brother, Tom. "Uncle Arthur, I've always looked up to you. After my dad passed away, you were the one who made sure I had what I needed for college. Do you remember that?" I did remember. It was $3,000 for his textbooks and dorm fees, given without a second thought when Tom's life insurance didn't cover everything. Daniel had sent me thank you notes for months after, updating me on his grades, his dream of becoming a teacher, his endless gratitude for the opportunity. "You paid that back a long time ago, Daniel. Every penny, because you taught me that debts matter. That responsibility is important. But more than that, you showed me what love really looks like." He paused, and I could hear him moving around his apartment. "I'm just sorry my cousins don't seem to see that." My cousins. Not his siblings, not his family. He understood the difference between relatives by blood and family by choice better than the children I had raised myself. "Daniel, you've always been a special young man. Your father would be so proud of the man you've become." "I learned from the best examples," he said. "You and my dad. Mostly you, after he was gone." Another pause. "Uncle Arthur, I'm serious about helping. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. No questions asked." No questions asked. The polar opposite of every conversation I'd had with my own children lately. Their conversations were full of questions. How much? When? What do I get out of it? Why can't you handle it yourself? I appreciate that more than you could ever know. Family takes care of family, he said simply. That's what you taught me. After we hung up, I sat in my recliner for a long time, just holding the phone and thinking about our conversation. Daniel had called not because he needed something, but because he'd heard I might. He'd offered help without any conditions, asked about my well-being without any calculations, and expressed genuine gratitude for kindness shown in the past instead of entitlement to support in the future. I opened my notebook and turned to a fresh, clean page. At the top, I wrote, Daniel Brooks, True Family. Below that, I started to plan how I would make sure that real loyalty was truly rewarded. The lottery ticket in my safe didn't just belong to me anymore. It belonged to someone who understood what family really meant. A week later, I was driving toward Columbia with the documents that would change everything. The January morning was crisp and clear, the winter sunlight glinting off my windshield as I navigated the downtown traffic toward the South Carolina Lottery Commission headquarters. I parked in the designated government lot and walked through security, the manila envelope tucked securely under my arm like a CEO carrying a major contract. The guard directed me to the third floor, where a receptionist with a professional smile checked my appointment time. Mr. Brooks, congratulations. Ms. Davis will be with you in a moment to handle your claim. Maria Davis looked to be about Kevin's age, dressed in a sharp business suit with the competent air of someone who dealt with life-altering moments every day. Her office walls were covered in framed photos of past lottery winners, all of them ordinary people holding giant, oversized checks, their faces a mixture of disbelief and pure joy. Please, have a seat, she said warmly. Let's start by verifying your winning ticket. I handed her the slip of paper that had become the source of so much turmoil in my family. She slid it under a special scanner, checked the numbers against her computer system, and then nodded with a satisfied smile. It's confirmed. The $1.5 million jackpot from the January 12th drawing. You have the winning ticket. She looked up, her expression genuinely happy for me. How does it feel to be a millionaire, Mr. Brooks? Like justice, I said, and then quickly corrected myself. I mean, surprising. It feels very surprising. She smiled and began to walk me through the process. Federal taxes would take 24%. State taxes another 7%. That would leave me with approximately $5,000. I had the choice between annual payments spread out over 30 years or a single lump sum. The choice was easy. Lump sum, please. I have very specific plans for this money. Excellent. Let me get the paperwork ready. For the next hour, I signed forms, provided my identification, and answered questions about tax withholdings and bank deposits. Ms. Davis explained the services available to winners, the media policies, and offered recommendations for financial advisors. The whole experience felt surreal, a series of bureaucratic steps that were transforming a set of abstract numbers into tangible wealth. And here is your check for $1,005,000, Mr. Brooks. She handed me a piece of paper that weighed almost nothing but felt like it held the weight of the world. Congratulations, again. Do you have any immediate plans for your winnings? I'm going to take care of my family, I said. The family that deserves it. Afterward, I drove to a quiet park overlooking the Congaree River. I found an empty bench and sat for a long time, just holding the check in my hands. A little over $1 million. More money than I had earned in the last 20 years combined. But it wasn't the amount that mattered. What mattered was the justice it represented. Daniel would receive $800,000, plus the house. It would be enough to secure his future, pay off any student loans from his teaching degree, maybe even allow him to get a master's degree or travel during his summers off. It was money that would go to someone who had shown genuine care and kindness without any expectation of a reward. The remaining $200,000 would be more than enough to cover my own living expenses for whatever time I had left. I would never have to ask my children for anything ever again. And more importantly, they would never again have the opportunity to treat my financial needs as an inconvenience, something to be avoided or manipulated for their own benefit. The cold winter wind rustled the bare trees, carrying with it a sense of change and new possibilities. Tomorrow, I would call my children one last time. I would invite them to dinner for a conversation that would change the shape of our family forever. They were about to learn that actions have consequences, that love has a value far greater than money, and that the father they had dismissed as a fool was far wiser than they had ever imagined. I carefully folded the check and placed it in my wallet, right next to the scrap of paper with Daniel's phone number on it. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning that their own choices had earned them. Saturday evening brought me back to the Harbor Grill for the final act of this family tragedy. I sat in my car in the parking lot, reviewing the documents one last time. The winning lottery ticket, the official claim verification form, and the folded check that was about to change everything. Maria seated us at the same large round table as before, a cosmic irony that was not lost on me. Brenda arrived with her children, Kevin with Chloe, and Leo, for once, was on time. They all fell into their familiar roles. Brenda scanning the menu for the cheapest options, Kevin dissecting the wine list, Leo ordering the most expensive steak without a second thought. "So, what's the big occasion this time, Dad?" Kevin asked after we had ordered. "2 family dinners in 2 weeks, that's not like you." "I just wanted to see everyone," I replied, calmly cutting into my piece of grilled fish. The conversation followed its predictable, depressing course. Brenda brought up the kids' upcoming summer camp fees. Kevin mentioned a can't-miss investment opportunity. Leo complained about a slow week of tips at the bar. Not one of them asked about my health, my loneliness, or how I'd spent my days since our last dinner. When Maria brought dessert, ice cream sundaes for the grandkids, coffee for the adults, I knew the moment had come. "I have something to tell all of you." I set my coffee cup down, my hands perfectly steady. "I won the lottery 2 weeks ago." Silence. Complete and absolute silence. Even the grandchildren looked up from their phones. "Won what lottery?" Brenda's voice was filled with the skeptical tone of someone who has been disappointed too many times. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed the worn, creased lottery ticket on the table. $1.5 million. The Palmetto Cash 5 drawing from January 12th. Here's the ticket. Kevin grabbed it first, his eyes scanning the numbers with the intense focus of a man calculating his odds. These are the numbers you always play. Family birthdays, your mother's, mine, my siblings, Daniel's too. $1.5 million? Leo's voice cracked. "Dad, are you serious?" I pulled out the official verification form from the Lottery Commission and the check, laying them out on the table like a prosecutor presenting the final pieces of evidence. $1,005,000 after taxes. It's all right here. The transformation was instantaneous and sickeningly predictable. Brenda's eyes welled up with tears. Not tears of joy for my good fortune, but tears of desperate, greedy calculation. Kevin leaned forward, his posture aggressive, like a man preparing to take command. Leo stared at the check with the rapt attention of a compulsive gambler seeing his ultimate salvation. "Dad, this is incredible." Brenda reached across the table as if to touch the sacred documents. "We need to be smart about this. The kids' college funds, my mortgage." "Actually," Kevin interrupted, his voice sharp and authoritative, "the first priority has to be a proper investment strategy. Dad, you're going to need professional financial management." "Hold on," I said quietly, and something in my tone made them both freeze. Before anyone starts making plans for how to spend my money, let me tell you about my last 2 weeks. I looked at each of them, one by one. I tested you, all 3 of you. Confusion flickered across their faces. Brenda, on Monday I called you with chest pains. I said I needed $50 for a shuttle to see a heart specialist. You were too busy with a client's highlights to help, but you did manage to ask me for $150 for a new uniform. Her face went white. Dad, Kevin, on Tuesday, I called you for investment advice about some old stock certificates. Instead of helping me understand my options, you immediately tried to get me to sign over control of my money to you. That was for your own good. It was professional guidance. Leo, on Wednesday, I told you I'd lost my wallet with my rent money in it. You couldn't help me because you'd lost $400 in a poker game. Leo's mouth opened, then snapped shut, no sound coming out. Each of you failed a simple test, I said, my voice even and calm. When your father needed you, you put your own interests first. When I asked for a small amount of help, you either refused or tried to manipulate the situation for your own gain. The normal Saturday evening buzz of the restaurant continued around us, a stark contrast to our own table, which was imploding under the weight of years of accumulated truth. But Daniel, I continued, watching their faces contort at the mention of their cousin's name. Daniel called on Thursday. He had no agenda, no requests. He was just checking on me because he'd heard I was stressed. He offered me his help without being asked. His money, his time, his company, whatever I needed. So? Brenda's voice was sharp with desperation. He's not even your son. No, I said, standing up slowly, my decision now as solid as steel. But he understands what family means, real family. I pulled my wallet out and placed enough cash on the table to cover my meal. Daniel will be receiving $800,000 and the house. He earned it with his kindness and his respect. The explosion was immediate. Brenda burst into tears, real tears this time, a mixture of rage and utter desperation. Kevin began shouting about legal challenges, his voice rising with indignation about fairness and my manipulation. Leo just stared at the table, the finality of the situation finally dawning on his face like a slow, dark sunrise. Dad, you can't be serious, Brenda sobbed. We're your children. Children who treated their father like a bank account with legs. Children who mocked my lottery tickets one day and planned how to spend the winnings the next. Chloe, who had been silent through the whole revelation, gently touched my arm. Mr. Brooks, I understand that you're hurt, but maybe— Chloe, you are a good woman, I said, looking her in the eye. And I am truly sorry that you are married to a man who sees his own father as a financial resource instead of as a human being. I walked toward the restaurant's exit without a single glance back, their voices rising behind me in a chaotic chorus of protests, accusations, and desperate pleas. The cold night air felt clean and fresh after the suffocating atmosphere of family disappointment. In my car, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Daniel's number. It was time to call my real heir and share the news that would change his life forever. Justice, as it turned out, felt exactly like walking away from the people who had never deserved my love in the first place. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know what you thought of the story in the comments below. To listen to our next story, click on the video to your left. Thank you for watching.